Here at Ngosi Talk Shows, Find Your Own Voice, Lead from Within. So today I am with Shireen. We are meant to have more people, but some people have not turned up, so I don't know if they're going to turn up. But me and Shireen, we're going to continue. We are still talking about the understanding the lingering impact of ancestral slavery. So today we're going to talk about the shackles of the past and tracing our ancestral journey and the inherited burden, where Black people have inherited that burden, and the white community where they've inherited that burden, the trauma as well. We're going to cover the trauma, forging the path to healing, reclaiming your identity and culture. Some people lost their identity through this journey, and some people, they had to deal with breaking the chains of the silence. So we hope that there are some people who did not agree with the slavery, whether they were coming from white society or Black society, but those people, they are carrying the chains of silence. So by this video, we are hoping that you guys, our audience, you will find breakthrough and empowering our generation, embracing forgiveness. We have to forgive each other. There are some people in the white community, they have to forgive their brothers and sisters, parents, and us as well. We have to find that forgiveness as well, to forgive so we can move on with life. And what I've learned, I don't know about you, Shireen, what I have learned when I was asking the speakers if they wanted to talk about this topic, I've realized that there's lots of full of anger. People don't really want to talk about this topic. Is very sensitive to them. But for me, the question is, if you're holding anger, how are you able to open that gate, reclaim your identity, reclaim the gate? Because when every portal in heaven, whether we go to heaven, the portal of blessings, my pastor was discussing today, and he said to us, every blessing that you want, there is a portal, there is a gate that you have to go through. Is either, but you have to know who is occupying that gate of your blessing. If you have not reclaimed those blessings, so the blessing, the unforgiveness can actually hinder us moving forward. So I'm hoping today we're going to break that. And some people might find breakthrough, some people may not. What do you think, Shireen?
Well, yeah, it's such a good topic. And yes, I think there's people are angry, but I also think people are fearful too. I think, when we talked about this a long time ago, well, maybe not so long, but at least 2 months ago, it just came as a topic as we just thought about it and realized, because both of us are from South Africa, both have had very different lives. And, I was kind of really talking about a lot of the stuff that I experienced having come from, say, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and then here to South Africa, and experiencing for the first time the separation that I'd never experienced before. And to kind of say, I was very young when Zambia when Zambia declared independence, but it was a very different time. And when we moved to South Africa, so South Africa had definitely installed a lot of its apartheid by that point. And so it was very instilled within within the environment that we were in. But what really made me think about things was when I do remember when the Soweto riots hit the very first time. I was probably a matric, and it really brought a lot of fear up into people, because for the first time they were really having to face the fact that there were some bitter truths, right? The bitter truths that you can't keep people that have an equal right in the same way as you to keep them in a place where they're almost like caged animals, right? I mean, that's totally unfair. And I think it was, for me, it was incredibly challenging, because I couldn't understand why I was going to a white school. I had gone to school with co-ed, but also multiracial. So I just couldn't understand this. And I couldn't deal with the fact that people saw, particularly privileged white, believed that they were better than, right? And this better than meant that they could perpetuate the atrocities that was, acceptable. And it was kind of acceptable, which was really awful. And I do, my father is just one of these people who just used to feel so ashamed of white people. He said, sometimes I'm so ashamed I'm white when I look at what white people do. And, and then, of course, there's this judgment. And you can see there's also this other judgment, which is, we're better than that, which shouldn't have been there. But actually, there is a judgment that sits in that, in and of itself. So it was really interesting. And only once I kind of left South Africa was I able to start to unpick a lot of the stuff, a lot of the pain that I experienced and hadn't realized. But it was because and I hate to say it, but other than the fact that my dad was actually, he did have a thing where he really wouldn't hurt anyone and would help everybody, which he would. He'd give the shirt off his back to anyone, didn't matter who they were, but he still was racist, right? He still was racist. And we were in a community now that was racist. And here I am the person that would never, we had a maid, but she would never made my bed. She never made my bed. She never made me tea or coffee. I wouldn't let that happen. Whereas my people felt it wasn't an issue. I've paid for your service. So therefore, I can demand that you make me coffee at will. For me, that just didn't fit right with who I was. And so I had a lot of conflict at home. I had a lot of conflict with a lot of my fellow, my colleagues and my friends. There were very few that really could understand what I had kind of, when you've had friends, and you've been told you can't go and stay at their house when you've already been there and you've met the family, and then all of a sudden, because they find out that they're Black, that was the betrayal I felt when that happened was to my friend. It was just the worst thing. But I was only 8 or 9 at that point. But it really is still there. It still carries. So part of that anger, probably with my parents and the way of the world, really contaminated a lot of the stuff. So I think that when it was, as we were talking about this kind of the shackles of the past and the trauma, we don't think about that. Everybody, even, it doesn't matter who they are. If you've got a difference of opinion, then you're going to carry some of that trauma, either because you haven't done anything, or you did and you have to run away and hide, or you get persecuted. You will experience that trauma. And God, if you're a Christian, that dissonance really is quite challenging. So yeah, that was something that was from my own personal experience. And I think that I think there were many people that were like that. And many people struggled, particularly if you go into medicine and, you've got to, send someone to another hospital because, of a different color. That was just really horrendous. So, and I could never imagine, I could never put myself in someone's shoes that's been constantly seen as less than, because I could never have that experience. I can just kind of experience a little bit, but I could never experience having grown up like that, right? And having that trauma again and again and again and again. So I can see how that could create a lot of trauma, but a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and a lot of shame. A lot of shame comes with that too. I think. Not, not just for Black people, but for white people too. Yeah. You're
Hi, Ellen Godley. So he's saying he loves his topic, but his connection is really, really rubbish today on LinkedIn. So he's saying he's going to connect with us. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us on replay. For me, Sharina, I just, when I got really passionate about this topic is when I was talking to you a few weeks ago, and I realized that actually there is a heart within you for what you've witnessed as a child, and you shouldn't have to go through all that, but you did. And I was in Henley where my father-in-law is, and the care home. So I met this woman as Mzwakembuli's sister. So we started talking, and they started talking. She goes, we're talking about something similar to the topic. She goes, Nomsa, do you know? So we started talking about Mandela. So I was like, oh, I used to work at Parkland Clinic where Mandela used to get admitted.
Yeah.
He had his own room there in Winnie Mandela. So when he gets admitted, and then they will announce he's in a different hospital, but he was in that hospital. So we started talking, and she goes, did you know that I was the one that got Mandela arrested? And I was like, how did you manage to do that? And she goes, Nomsa, the police were looking, he passed through me. I knew he, the family were all friends, and then he passed through me hiding. So they gave me a lollipop for me to show them where he was hiding. So she said, I showed them where he was hiding, and he got arrested. And she was saying, as a child, it affected her later on when the family were telling her the story, what happened. And I was like, this is a small world. Yeah. And when we were talking, and I was like, did you think one day we'll be here in the United Kingdom? And she was like, no, son, no, I wouldn't think that. I just thought my life would be different, but now I'm here. So I looked at her and I was like, you got Mandela arrested. So I was like, give me your number. It was so, when we were talking, I was like, I love to interview your brother one day. When you have time, please connect me with him. But it was that moment when we were talking, and that's when we realized where we are today and where we've been. And for me, when I realized that actually this slavery thing affected my family, because my family stayed in South Africa, and I started to actually do the DNA test, and just to find out about my bloodline, because my dad always said we are not from here. And then he died, and he was a history man. So I was like, why did he keep saying we are not from here? So I decided to do DNA, and then I realized we are half Nigerian and half Kenyan.
All right.
Was like, and then his mom is actually the one that is a South African, and my great grandmother, the one we thought she was actually Xhosa. She's not Xhosa. She's mixed race. She's from Germany. So it was identity of hiding, trying to fit in, because as her being mixed race, and people will not actually identify her, so she has to fit in the Black community. So I was like, oh, so that is the story. So now I'm figuring out in my head, what did my family why did they have to go through all this? So then now I'm finding out that there was a king in my family, and that throne, it exists. It does not exist anymore in the physical, but in spirit, it exists. So Carol Annie kept saying, no, so why? Because I was having problems, I kept confiding in her, and she was like, I think there are some things you need to find out. Then when I started digging in my family, and then I realized actually I would have been a princess taking over the throne. And that's why my life is just not going well at all. And what they did, the king, he bought it for them to be free. He bought them the land in South Africa and the border between Zimbabwe and South Africa and where else. So when I was doing this research, and I was like, okay, so they had to mingle in, adapt with whatever they adapted and went quiet. And I was like, this is a very, very painful story. But what happened? And I was like, it seems like my dad knew the whole story, but he couldn't tell me the story. But you know, the beautiful thing about life is meeting people like you who actually who are holding the chains, but who are willing to actually say, you know what, I am willing to let those chains go. I think that is amazing, because what I have experienced was I asked Tamia never says no to anything. And she was like, Nomsa, this is a painful story that I don't want to talk about when it comes to my ancestors. I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, she's not the only one. So many people are holding anger. They are angry. And then I said, I had to pray to God and say, I need to forgive and move on with my life. Because if I hold this anger, if I hold this pain inside of me, wanting to know what my ancestors went through, and then I had to ask forgiveness on their behalf as well, because there must be some pain that they have gone through. And during that, and I'm just praying, and the things started going wrong with the business and everything. And then I'm like, God, show me the way. And he was like, the slavery is not there in the physically, but in spirit, it exists 100%. You need to fight this way. So I was like, I don't think so. So I had to actually scream and shout, ancestors, and telling them off to say, release me. I don't want to be a slave to nobody. But what advice, Shireen, would you give somebody for what you witnessed as a child, somebody who is holding anger in a Black community and a white community? Because there are some people in the white community, the society, that are angry for what other people were treated, and they were not even able to speak up because that's not what they wanted. And there are Black people within the community that are angry as well, the way they were treated. So what advice can you actually give to somebody today?
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, I mean, I can't really speak for everyone, but I certainly think that one of the things that can go a long way is to really recognize that we were out of control, right? We were in a place that we couldn't do anything about. And yes, that was the circumstances. And to really look at how you've changed and where you are now, so that you can have that difference of knowing, because I think what happens is when we get stuck, we stay angry, still stuck at that age almost. And we're not really rationalizing that we've grown through that and we've become different as a result of that. Now, that does mean that we might have had a different life if we had it differently. But unfortunately, that's the life we had. So it's now about to really look at what changed for you and how you're better now. Because I think when you kind of start to look at it, wasn't your fault. You did the best job that you could right then, and you tried your best to survive in some way. It may not have been the optimal way that you would think of now, but it was what we do, right? And within the culture that we're living in, we have to make decisions. And those decisions, and doesn't matter what anybody does, we will always go for survival first, right? Because this body, doesn't matter who it is, is precious to us. And so we will, that we have an intrinsic, innate desire to survive. And so we will do whatever it is to survive. So on some level, as that young child, that's what you would have done. And it's really to look at that child and go, thank you for letting me get here, right? Thank you for letting me get here. I know that wasn't the optimum. I know you would have liked it differently. I know that you would have wanted a different life, but we're here now, right? So thank you for being here now. And to then just really kind of just say, how can you use your anger? If you are angry, how can you use that anger to change things for the better? So instead of using it as a way to punish, use it as a way to channel your energy, like Mahatma Gandhi did, right? He channeled his anger and he created something completely different by getting India free. And, you know, Nelson Mandela would have been angry right at the very start. And he had to learn to channel his anger so that he could change and become the great humanitarian that he did become. You know, I think if he hadn't gone to jail and not that I think that it was that he should have gone to jail, but maybe, you know, that in its own way was a blessing for him in the sense of how he evolved and changed. It's not, I mean, obviously it's not what we would have wanted, right? But it is part of the fact that he was the one person that decided on the truth and reconciliation. And that really shows, you know, that I don't think very young people would come up with that, but certainly someone who's gone through the struggle, particularly the internal struggle, and then move forward because he had a bigger vision, a bigger dream, as Martin Luther King had, right? So it's you channel the anger, the injustice, the non-righteous decisions of a situation or circumstance, and you channel it into something that becomes glorious, something that expands humanity in some way.
I love that, Shireen, when you mention Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther. You know, these are the people, they are one of the people that actually they impact the world. And, you know, Nelson Mandela showed what it means to be the person that he was, and he was willing to do whatever it takes. He was willing to die for his country, for his generation, not to prove, but to show people what it means to be him, for his bloodline. And he knew he was representing every person around the world for what he was, even Martin Luther. And Martin Luther showed that being a black person is a gift, and being a white person is a gift. So if we all come together as one, we can actually create something out of humankind. And when it comes to people that are angry, people that don't know how they can move forward because of what our ancestors went through, for me, I would say, you have to find a special place in your heart to forgive, because without forgiveness, I listened to my pastor today. When my pastor is, my church is Dr. Olukoye's church, is where he talks about generation, how generation, the past can impact your present moment. Even though some people say the past doesn't matter. And also he talks about more the forgiveness. He says we can focus on who did what, who did this, but at the end of the day, what you'll be doing as a person is holding your life back. The only way that he says is just forgiveness. He says you have to understand the power of forgiveness, forgiving yourself for holding that pain that our ancestors went through, or witnessing that pain. Because some of the people, for me, I was young, I heard these stories, but I always say the person that went through the pain and the person that was told the story is two different things. When you go through the pain, you feel it.
Yeah.
We have to go through it. And your emotions, your feelings, you experience it, and you go through that journey. And but for me, if I'm told the story, all I have to do is relate to the story. But I witnessed as well when I was older how in South Africa the white community is, but now it's actually better. Because the white community and black community, they marry each other now.
Yeah, they're allowed to.
Yeah, it's actually gone better. And even sometimes when I go to Africa, I see white people. When I went to South Africa, I think I was so shocked in 2014. I met this white guy in town, and he was actually talking to us and wanting to hang out. And as somebody who's got his own business, so I was like, well, things have changed in South Africa. But there are some people who are still living that life of slavery, but that is fine. But at this moment, when we talk about through this journey, we talk about the journey of forgiveness and finding healing, because when you want to find healing, is a very, very painful journey to go through that. And for me, when I had to face, when I did all my tests and everything, just following my ancestral journey, I had questions within myself. And I imagine my great-grandparents, what they went through. And I imagine on my daddy's side and on my mother's side, because I realize when I'm looking at the language, on my mom's side, they are Swahili. So they had to use Zulu in order for them to actually fit in South Africa. And also my family, I think there was a link between somebody found a woman in South Africa, got married, went quiet, go. So all these things were in my head. And I'm like, now I'm like, even in Sierra Leone, I've got my family as well that are in Sierra Leone. And I was like, how did that happen? So that is just, I had all these questions, but imagine somebody who is holding those chains, who actually went through the experience, what they will be feeling will be anger. But there are some who have forgiven. And when they talk about it, you can see they are very, very passionate about it. And I'm hoping that someday our audience and these other coaches that I've been approaching and who are really, really angry, I'm hoping that they will find that forgiveness. Because when I was listening to my pastor today, talking about the gate of success, and I realized that without forgiveness, there is no way that you can actually get, because you can get through to that gate. Because he was saying the business, why are you not a billionaire? Why are you not a millionaire? That means that somebody is actually occupying that gate of your business. But who is it that is occupying the gate of your business? And he was like, let's say now you pray, you say, God, God. In that God, the throne of grace, there is somebody who is occupying that gate of the throne of grace. But then if you want to enter and ask God for your blessings, who actually, who occupies it, who stops you in that? Somebody is there to stop you, to say no. And they have to put their case why they say no. So he was saying all these things, you have to go back to your generational roots and actually forgive every little things that we take for granted in order for us to actually live the life that we want, which is with this ancestral journey is actually big. When I was praying, I thought it was a small thing, but when I realized actually there is anger in spirit, there is still in a realm where they actually stop. There's a realm mostly in the United Kingdom. There's a realm where they say how far Black people can go, where they have made a decree where how far Black people can go. And also he was saying, like, right now I'm in United Kingdom. He was like, how do you know you are in United Kingdom? And I was like, now I'm getting messed up now in my head. What do you mean? How do I know I'm in United Kingdom? And he was like, what if you didn't actually enter the gate of United Kingdom and you are in Africa? Your spirit, your winning spirit is actually in Africa. So I was like, okay, what do I need to do to be in United Kingdom? And he was like, you got to pray, you got to forgive. There are some things. And I was like, it actually makes sense. He was like, there's some people who come here, it takes them 10 years to get papers. Which gate did they enter?
Yeah.
Was it United Kingdom's gate? And the reason why I'm sharing this is the same thing with the ancestors, this slavery thing. And I met so many Black people that are so talented, and there's many white people that are talented. Some people, their lives are being wasted. And I don't know if you've seen some YouTube videos where the story that touched me the most is the guy that is one of the top bankers in the United Kingdom.
Right.
He's a Black guy, and he went through hell with the police. He even nearly lost his job because he's a banker, and he does the estate business, a real estate business. So that's where he make all his money. He's living in this huge house. He drives a 1 million car. And they stopped him. The police kept stopping him, saying, because of his color, where did you get the money? And the story is so painful when you actually, I followed his story. It's so painful, and it shows that in United Kingdom or around the world, there are some people that are still feeling that way, even the police. He said he was actually being tortured for being Black. And they said, where does he take the money? Where does he get the money to drive a 1 million car? Apparently, he produced every document of how he makes the money, and they still arrested him over and over and over, trashed his house. At work, they destroyed his work. And his wife, he was saying they've never ever experienced something like that in their lives. And the guy says, in the end, the story ends with they can actually compensate you. But what do they do when they compensate? What about the character that they have destroyed? Who actually clean that character? The character that they come wherever he was with his clients and everything, asking questions. And he was saying, you can never, ever give me that. You can never, ever, ever give me back my identity. So have you ever come across that story, Shireen?
I haven't come across that story, and that is just absolutely tragic for that someone should experience that in this day and age. You know, it happened in the past, but I think right now this is just absolutely horrendous. And I don't even know where someone would start to forgive in that situation, right? And also, what does that say for them about their level or feeling of safety, being in a place where the United Kingdom is meant to be a safe place for all its citizens? So that's really something that is terribly, terribly disappointing and sad. And at the same time, it is something that we are going to have to learn to. I'm just so ashamed in a way that people can do that, that is something that we think is a nice place, and we think it's as you talked about the United Kingdom, that these kinds of things happen, and it shouldn't be. And and it really does require that we have to go back to the drawing room and start again. And it doesn't, but the problem is, and that's the problem, is that sadly, and maybe more of a thing is, are people willing to go and stand and fight in the same way, right? Because that's another thing that comes up in that. Is the cause big enough according to all the people? And are we willing to stick our necks out for when we see something like this? And that's another aspect of human behavior, right? We won't necessarily, as I said, we will probably go on the side of safety rather than put ourselves in jeopardy in some way or other. And the fact that he is suffering, I can only just imagine what that is going to be on him and his family. And I certainly hope that he will find a way to be able to see that he is not what they think he is, right? That he can still hold that essence of who he is and know who he is, and know that no matter what, that he is valuable as a human being. And I can, and the family, because, it's not just him, it's everybody around. So, yeah, I wanted to go back to the roots and yes, and how do we find our sense of value? How do we know that we have that intrinsic value? I suppose as I'm going back, and that's when you go for your roots, right? When you've come from a collective history of trauma, we have to go back from where we came in order to, it's literally, we've got to go back home, in effect, to gather all our DNA, so to speak. We have to gather it back and bring it back so that we can carry that DNA forward for the future generations. And when I say we go back and heal those wounds, but go back and also celebrate their strength, their power, their magnificence, their ability to survive, right? Their ability to thrive as well in different ways, but getting there. So we're standing on their shoulders. And now's the time to really go back and acknowledge that. So I think it gets, when it's a painful story, it really is probably even more important to go back and find those roots and find a way to really sit in admiration for the people that went through the struggle, right? Because when you can truly sit and see that as the gift that you were given, it means that you are actually moving forward for them, right? It's not just you anymore. It's your collective you that you've gathered, and you've brought all that energy, and not just the energy of what was their pain, but what was their strength. And I think that is the bit that I think probably for you, I'm making an assumption here, but when you went on that journey, it made you bigger in a way, because you were collecting them, weren't you? You were collecting them en route, and you were seeing the wonder of that. And yes, there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of stuff. But I think once you start to see, and you go and you look and you see the strength, the pure power, the will, the capacity, and the love that they would have had to pull that through, I think it just, you get full of awe and full of wonderment, and that then just gives you that extra boost to drive you forward. So I think for anyone that's really struggling, we have to find our roots, right? And especially if you've been disenfranchised in any way, you need to, I think it's one way to find who you are so that you can find that intrinsic knowing. Otherwise, you're like a ship with a, without a compass. I think you need to have something to hold and say, this is me. This is me. I am all of this as I bring myself forward. And yes, we all have, we've all got DNA that was from the beginning of time, but we've all got our roots from that beginning of time. And that's those roots that we, the different struggles that people had that we must bring forward. Sorry, excuse me. to do that. I don't know, is that something that you found for yourself when you went and realized? I mean, I know you said when a king on a throne, I could hear something really in your voice at that moment in time.
Yes, I think there was anger. I think somebody might think that when I actually find out that actually in my family there was a king in my family, when I realized there was so much anger, because when I was in South Africa, I kept having a vision where there was this throne and I was being brought to this throne and I couldn't understand what was going on. And I asked my dad, he said, because you would have been the person that would have taken the throne. But then when I actually decided to let me do some research, find out about my family, that was during lockdown. And I know some people, they would have found joy in it, but to me, there was anger because I felt that my family's lives were stripped away from them. And I felt that the lives were changed. And I looked back and I was like, where would I be if I was if my family were allowed to live that life that they were meant to live? So there was so much anger. I don't want to lie. I don't want to sit back. When I actually opened my DNA, I was shocked to realize the identity of my family. And at the same time, I was confused. And there was questions within me that those questions, no one could answer them. And when I started looking back, my dad, I actually spoke to one of the Nigerian guy, and he said, Nomsa, if you want to see the identity of your family, look at your great-grandfather's son, mostly is the firstborn and the lastborn. Check the names that they gave. So my great-granddad gave my daddy's name as a nickname, Mawewe, which is a Swahili.
Yeah.
So I kept asking questions. Why is my granddad called Mawewe? And no one could explain it to me. So then when I did my research and I spoke to this guy, and he said, Nomsa, our ancestors were very, very smart people. So what they did, they would name their son as the name, they would give them as a nickname or as their first name. So when I started checking my family, and I was like, wow, that's what they did on my mom's side and my daddy's side. I was so happy with my family that they wanted me to find out the identity, and I was able to follow my father's footsteps and actually check my family's identity. But I cannot sit here and say, oh, I was so happy that I come from the royal family and stuff. I was angry. I had to deal with anger. It was not all about the royal. I was like angry why their lives were stripped away, but I had to forgive. I had to come to a place where I had to forgive. And when I came to a place where I had to forgive, and there was times where I reclaimed my identity now. And when I reclaimed my identity, there was a war that I created unknowingly in spirit. There was like, they just want, I don't know, if I speak the language, somebody might not understand. Anyone who is not a Christian might not understand. But there was a war. The minute I said, I am reclaiming my ancestors' identity, and I didn't realize that power must change hands, meaning those who took power in my family, I'm reclaiming that power. I'm reclaiming my family's identity, because in the spirit it still exists, and I created a war. But that is another story to talk about. But when I actually forgave, it was the time where now I needed to understand my identity. Who am I? And when I actually started accepting, there was acceptance as well, where I needed to accept that my family are actually half Kenyan, half Nigeria, and South Africa as well. And there was that journey where I had to accept. And when I had to accept, there are some memories that I had to leave behind. In that moment, the forgiveness is not an easy journey. I understand those who are angry, but from my experience, anger is a stagnation. Because when you decide actually you want to move on, there's joy. There was so much where I had to experience, but now that I understand that I'm half Nigerian and I'm half Kenyan, now I can begin my journey. My attitude changed completely. My mindset changed completely, because I realized, and I was like, I needed to find out what the culture, what they are. So when I find out the culture Igbo, and I was like, I accept the person that I am. And as I understand, I look at my grandfather, Shireen, my great-granddad was, my daddy's side, he was a wealthy man. When he died, he's wealthy just because it's just got scattered, because my dad was the firstborn and people were fighting for his wealth in a way that my dad was like, this is my dad. I don't want to honor my dad like this. So he just gave away everything because he wanted to honor his father in the right way. So I started checking again my granddad, his culture, and I was like, wow, I need to follow his footsteps. I need to reclaim that bloodline for my children, for my bloodline. And I created another war, but that's fine. I've been battling it, but it's not easy. So the reason why I'm sharing this, we may sit back. There are some people who don't know their identity. And but if you know your identity and you accept it, yes, our ancestors went through slavery. My ancestors did, but the choice that I've made is to forgive. Is it easy to forgive? No, it's not. I had to forgive in spirit. I had to forgive in the physically. There were times where I had a showdown with the spirits. I had to fight, big fight. And Martin was like, Nomsa, you need to calm down. I was so angry, really, really angry. And to show them that I am angry, I'm no slave, just because my ancestors when I was angry with white ancestors. Because I felt, when I asked God, why am I keep having problems? My clients are having problems. And I said, because Nomsa, you're facing what your family went through. In the slavery, there is, in spirit, there is a decree where Black people, how far they can go. So you need to fight that part. Oh, I got so angry, and I was like, and this was like, whoa, witness's daughter, calm down. Honestly, I got so angry. My dad is witness, and this spirit was like, you need to calm down. And I was like, I am no slave to nobody. And my clients are no slave to nobody. You're going to have to let me go. I need to find my own path. And whatever God has created me to become, no one is going to stop me to do that. And I'm going to become that person. And I realize the more I become smart. The more my brain gets released. The more I fight, the more my brain is like, it's like there is a chain that I'm releasing. So I was like, this thing is real. So I'm sharing this because there are some people, they let themselves enter into depression. Is because of, if you let our past hold you, they will hold you if you let them. But for me now, the journey that I'm taking is, okay, how can I be different? How can I bring the change to the pain that my family went through? So how can I actually impact the world and change and bring these people together? Whether, you know, like when we watch George Floyd, when he died, when I watched the video, I said to my friend, this is not about what he's done. It's not about this. This is a sacrifice. Somebody somehow is making these police pay. So when I started looking like in the, you know, like what is it called? The government, the offices. Sometimes they have
Parliament? You talk about Parliament?
Yeah, like Parliament, yeah. So when I started doing some research and stuff back to generation and generation, and this is what's happening for them, to the Parliament to stand. Some people do sacrifice and stuff. And I watch the you know, when you watch the story, you watch the white community, I was like, this is the person that is destroying white community and Black community, because we are trying, there are some people who are trying to bring us together, but somebody is actually separating people. So I have made a decision that I'm not going to, I cannot change other people's opinion, but I can bring people together, my own community. I can bring them together and show them that it is okay. You know, something nearly happens in Henley a few months ago. I had this dream, a child was being taken in Henley. Because I'm Black and I'm not famous, I told my pastor and one of the head teacher, these people, they called the social services. And I said to the social services, you are actually questioning me. If a famous person was telling you this dream, you'll be actually you'll be listening just because you're undermining me because I'm nobody. And I was like, okay, I know my dreams. And then 2 weeks later, the school is behind me. There were police everywhere.
Wow. Wow.
There were police everywhere. The people, they were actually trying to take the child, and somewhere outside in Henley as well. So they were following people. So I was like praying to God, do I need an apology? I was like, no, I don't. And I said to myself, like my pastor, he is a pastor. He should have known better, like to say pray. Because when I left him, I got home, and this angel came in and he was like, okay, you're done with them. Now it's time not to get angry. It's time to pray. And I was like, what do you mean it's time to pray? And it was like, you need to get to the scriptures. These people need to be stopped. So in order for them to actually, they're not going to believe you, know, sir, but you need to say out loud the scripture so that the police catch these people, they don't take the child. So I just said the scriptures out loud and I believed it, and they were caught without taking the child in Henley. So I was like, thank God. And after all that was over, they didn't talk to me, they didn't apologize. They didn't do anything. So I was like, it shows that sometimes some people, they are cowards. Just because the reason why I'm sharing this is because I know there are some Black people, they do have a voice, but they don't want to use their voice for the right reason. If you do have a voice, whether you're a white person, you do have a voice, you feel that you can change something in this world. Why are you going quiet? Why are you not changing that world and make it a better place? If you are a Black person, why thinking that your color defines you? And why being worried of being judged by people like Shireen? You mentioned that we live in this world where there's so much judgmental. For me, if I go home now, I don't think I can judge any white person, because I always say to people, like when I speak to my mom divorced with my dad. I always tell my mom, say, you're my best friend. I don't know the story you went through with my dad. You can tell me, but it doesn't mean that I know it. I don't.
Yeah.
The pain that you went through with my dad was a very good looking man and very charming. So I was like, mostly maybe women were all over him. And also he was young. The man wanted a housewife and my mom wanted to go back to university. So I always say to her, I don't know this story. For me to sit here and judge you and say, you guys separated, why did you separate? I always say, unless I've gone through that story, I'm never going to judge anybody because it's not my place to judge. There is a throne of grace where the judgment is made.
Yeah.
For me, as a child of God, for me is to accept everybody, but to pray those who are hurting people for God to bring them to justice. I always say, I go to the throne of grace and I never ever judge anyone because if I'm never going through that pain, I've told this, I've seen how white people behave towards the Black people, mostly in Africa. I've seen it. And when I came to the UK, I was so surprised that they are very, very welcoming. Things were very, very different in South Africa, 2002. But now when you go back, things are so different. Like here, there are South Africans, like white people I see where I live in Henley. They're so different. And when you talk to them, you talk about the story of their past, they're like, I never agreed to it.
Yeah.
And that has affected me. It's like they say they've never agreed to it. They were just children, but they didn't have a voice. But those chains are still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even when I was talking to you, Shireen, I spoke to you and I needed to know how you're going to feel, but I was surprised as well how you felt. And I was like, these are the chains that you're an innocent child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your feelings now are very, very clear because you were like very, very clear to me that Nomsa was a child, but I never agreed. Now looking back, my feelings, if I could take it back, I wouldn't agree a white person torturing a Black person, which is, that made me realize actually we are both under chains.
Yeah.
Not just Black people, there are some white people who did not agree to it, but they had to go through it, pretend. And that is a chain as well, because the chain is no, if I'm witnessing someone going through pain and feeling hopeless, can't help, that's a chain to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel, but to me, I feel that is a chain.
That is definitely a bind of some form. And and we could say strongly, it is a chain. And we have to find a way to unlock that chain or to break the chain in some way. And I do think, first of all, just to say admiration, because you definitely are an example of showing the way forward for people. And I think, for both white and Black, these are discussions we've got to have, right? We've got to have them, because we can't change anything until we can show up.
Yep.
Until we can show up and be who we are in our vulnerability and our, the messiness of it, because it is messy. It's very messy. And I think, like when I think about that young person that really did betray her friend, I kind of sit and I think about her and I think, you were just a child.
Yeah.
And then I also looked at the fact that you were a child who had very strict parents who beat the shit out of you at times. So I had to then go, I had no control in that, right? And that, on that level, once you're able to get to that place, you can then forgive that child. You can forgive that person who wasn't able to do whatever it was that they needed to do or would have wanted to do, because they really could not, in order to stay safe. And I think that it's so very important that, the more we talk about things, the more we show up in the vulnerability of who we are, it's going to give people the opportunity to start to be brave so that they can do this too. And that's not to say you accept in a sense of what happened was right, because it wasn't, but you accept it was there. So, and it's part of that cultural history. And then how do we change that? How do we bring a new way of being that's going to honor the pain? Because we need to honor it, right? We need to honor it happened. And we need to honor that people suffered, people died, people were traumatized. We're still carrying those traumas. And also, we need to also know that we are the ones that survive now. And we are the ones that it's our duty, it's our job, our responsibility to move forward and never let it happen again. And and really learn how prejudice happens. Notice when we are, because we evolved in a world where actually sameness and group in, group out kept us safe. But now we're really realizing that that's not the truth, right? So we are safe when we really are able to ascertain for ourselves that we're truly safe. And we don't just go with one or the other, the collective, in order to keep our safety. And we are fortunate. Most of us are fortunate. I'm not saying all of us, because there's still groups of people that are being hounded just because they're Black and just because they're of color of some form. So these things have got to be rightened, and we can only start by openly having that discussion and talking about it. And and we have to be brave. We have to be brave to do that on both sides. Well, on all the sides, really.
And also trauma can actually be transferred from generation to generation. And I like it when you say we have to be brave. For me, I was like, I'm not going to go through the pain that my ancestors went through, because that means that pain was transferred to my father. And from my father, it was transferred to my generation.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through that pain, and I don't want my children to go through that pain. And the only way for me to do that is to actually forgive, and knowing that if I actually understand the aftermath of ancestral slavery, and then I can be able to actually move forward with my life. And I don't know what they went through, but I can leave a lasting imprint on my psyche, because if I confront it as a ghost, I know I confronted it. There were times where I confronted it as a ghost, and I confronted it with anger. And when I confronted it with anger, there was acceptance. So I had to accept that life, that, okay, this is the time where I have to accept it. But when I accepted, I had to go through war with the ancestors. There was anger, and that anger, I was having a showdown in the day. I'll have a showdown with ancestors. I got angry. I will scream, and there were times where the time in the England, they actually, when they lost, and I got so angry, I got upset, and then I don't know, I just look at something, and then it's something they might test, and then I was like, oh, okay, ancestors, and I was like, England missed the game, and now I have to go through all this pain. So I got so angry, but there were times where I had to forgive. And the forgiveness is a journey as well. And for those who have not experienced it, I took the DNA test. And when I took the DNA test, I had to actually do some research and understand more about my family. And there were times where, like when everything is silent, it's too loud. When the
Yes.
silence is too
Yes.
loud because you can't get answers that what you're looking for.
Yeah.
There were times where I just wish my great granddad was here, but at the same time, I was so happy because when I realized actually the names, how he named his children,
Yeah.
I realized that he left the identity behind. No one was able to realize that apart, because my dad was full of history. He loved the history. So when he died, I was like, I'm going to continue with the history and just to find out more about my family. And I did. And I'm glad that I did, because talking to other coaches and talking to them about this topic made me realize that people are really, really angry. And I said to myself, but if people are really, really angry and some of them are Christian, so I was like, how do we move forward? How do you move forward with this? And I listened to my pastor when he talks about he talks more about how the past, the generation, how the past from our ancestors can affect the fifth generation. And I was like, if you actually don't forgive, you could carry that burden to your children and generation after generation. And for me, I was like, I just need to forgive and move on. It's not easy to forgive somebody knowing the truth. And for me, is the place where I didn't want to be, because I was like, why do I keep seeing the throne in spirit? What does this mean? And then I asked my pastor, I was like, because Nomsa, you could have been on that throne, and now you, and then I'm like, okay. So I'm like now praying, okay, I'm just gonna pray and move forward with my life. And then I'm being confronted by somebody stopping me doing the things that I want. I was like, no, that's not how my life needs to go. I need to live my life. I need to be free. And today as well, he's preaching, when I understand, and I was like, that gate that he's talking about, that you need to know who is occupying the gate of your business. And it was like, some people, they are billionaires. What did they have? If you look at these people, all of them that are the big speakers that are successful, they all use science and they all use religion at the same time. So I was like, I need to occupy my seat. I need my gate. And I was writing down, honestly, I was writing down everything, what I need to do, because this, I was writing down in everything what I need to say. And I know I'm just going to be confronted by another war, but I'm okay with that. So it's an amazing journey. If you are able to actually connect with God, I don't know what your beliefs are. It's amazing journey, because you can actually understand that the physical, what we do in the physical is what happens in the spirit realm.
Yeah.
And some people, they think that, okay, when you actually get blessings and manifest, you can just manifest, and then you get your blessings, you get the men that you want, you get the finances that you want. But then, yes, you can get it. But what happens when that is denied? So you have to learn to actually override that mountain and manifest more, because it can be denied. So, but that does not mean that you can't get it. So people give up. They're like, oh, I've done manifestation, it doesn't work. I've done this, but what if this slavery thing is the one that is stopping you? Unforgiveness. So I was like, I don't want to live with unforgiveness. It's very, very important to actually forgive and move on. And Martin Luther, he was that example of the story, how the story began. Black and white, we are one, whether we like it or not, we are one. We,
under the skin, we are equally,
yeah,
we have red blood.
yeah, we
We have the same blood in the same
yeah,
way. It's ridiculous. If we didn't have color in our pigments in our skin, we would be different. We would be the same. So yes, and we really need to realize that deeply, intrinsically through all of us, not just those that are already in the accepting. We need to
yeah,
inhale that
yeah.
that belief
We
and that
just
understanding.
want. It's just,
Yeah.
we just, because God created this world for us to enjoy it, to live in it, but He didn't create it for somebody to say, oh, this is a black person or this is a white person. I always I one day I have a friend, he's from Kenya and his family. And when he was addressing his boss, he kept saying, say. I was like, why do you keep saying, say? And he was like, it's respect. I was like, no, you have to address him with his name. Because when you do what you do, it means like you're worshiping somebody. So to me, you have to address somebody by name. Okay, you can say or madam when you are writing a letter. So I said, but when you're speaking to him, and it annoys me when I see like a black person, when they communicate with a white person and they communicate in a different way, it's like they are worshiping them. So I was like, no, you don't speak like that. You speak normal, because these people, they want you to be normal. They want you to, this is a country where we came to work, to change, but they don't want you to worship them the way. So it annoys me when I
Well, they've been conditioned that way. That's the problem.
yeah.
So it's certainly, and it's great that you remind them of what they need to do, which is so
Yeah.
important. Because if you don't have that, I want to just go back to something which you were talking about, really, that's so key. And I love the idea of the gates and who's occupying your gates. And I absolutely agree 100% that, when people are doing science, they do science and religion together, because they actually are two sides of a same thing.
Yep.
One is very much involved with feeling, and one's very much involved with thinking. But when we bring things together in a perfect union, that's when you properly manifest things. That's when things work. And I think that often what people don't understand with manifestation is that they don't understand the rules of manifestation. Like you were saying, the gate.
Yeah.
Who's sitting on your throne?
Yep.
Who's standing in front of your gate of prosperity, or your gate of this? And I think it's really important, because if we keep carrying our ancestral trauma, if we keep carrying grievances that don't belong to us,
Yep.
then we are just perpetuating the journey to, well, not saying the perpetuate, but we're perpetuating the blockage that stops our forward journey, or the journey of to sit on the throne. And it doesn't matter what that gate is. We have multiple gates. We have gates with connections to people. We have gates with prosperity. We have gates with, there's so many gates, but it's really about the gates to the kingdom that's going to make you happy. And we've been given this, and although culture or society has decided they want to decide what your gate is, we get to a time when actually we realize that we control the gate, right?
Yep.
The way we think about things, the way we act, the way we do things affect those gates. And I think that when we sort of really think about more, and the idea of how do we shift, I think when I consider the idea of forgiveness, I truly believe that it's a real act of love. It's the real act of showing I care about you as a human being. I care about you. And so I give that forgiveness because I care, and I can see you as that being. And when we have trauma, when we have things that have we've inherited, or we're sitting in the collective, in the sense of our societal kind of trauma that comes up, it is really hard, because we have spent so much time in the resentment and the anger that it's very hard to get that clarity. When we're angry at someone, we want to hit them. We want to, we want to do something. And that blocks us. That blocks that gate.
It locks us
right?
in.
It blocks the gate.
Yeah.
It blocks our heart.
Yep.
It blocks our heart. It kind of shields it. So we have to move into this place of saying, you are a human being. And so I'm going to forgive that. I'm going to forgive whatever's happened in whatever way. And particularly if it's for ourselves, right? We have to forgive, and we have to find a way to be able to do that, and to be able to separate and look and go, what can I, because one of the things that allows us to really be able to forgive in the sense of love is to look and truly appreciate, because that gives us that opportunity to soften when we start to appreciate the struggle that others have had, in order to really go, okay, I can see that, and I can acknowledge that, and I can own that, and I can take that as a boost for me to move forward. So I think, then because we can't forgive until we've softened.
Yep.
We have to soften, and sometimes when I work with clients, the easiest way to do that, because it's very hard for people who are so angry with themselves and angry, they find it very hard to forgive their inner child, or even forgive someone. But if you have them do it to an animal, most people, I'm not saying all, but most people understand that an animal doesn't know, it doesn't really know, it just does, it's reactive. And so we're more likely to forgive an animal, especially if it's your dog or your cat that you absolutely adore, and so that's where you start actually going somewhere place where you can actually already have the gate open. And then what we just do is widen the gate, basically, to somebody that you kind of like and whatever, and put that forgiveness, maybe they didn't make you a cup of tea this morning or whatever. And how do you forgive? So you can move that gate, and eventually by then you'll have softened enough, and because you've opened the gate, it's now not closed anymore, it's easier to open.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something that's really important, and I think so it is a structure in a way. So is religion, so is everything. In order to truly know God, you've got to know the scriptures. You've got to know, in a way, with how you reflect God. So in order to do that, we have got to learn and study and begin to be curious about all of that. So, I think we've been here for a wee while now. I think we're already an hour and a half.
If there's anyone who is struggling to actually manifest, or you want to open the gate, or whatever you want to do in life, you have to understand that once you start, whatever you are manifesting in life, or if you have not forgiven the past, and there's a theme that we do in our church once a month. It says power must change hands, and my pastor was explaining that when we say power must change hands, it means the wealth must change hands. It needs to go and belong to who it belongs to. It means if it belongs to you, it needs to
stay
come
with you.
It needs to come to you. You need to reclaim that. So in that way, he is actually teaching us to actually how to manifest properly, because there are some people who will manifest and get the results very, very easy. But then there are some people who then will go through the same manifestation. They want to manifest for marriage, want to manifest for business or good health, but they don't get the results. And then they then give up in that process. But what they need to understand is every journey is different. There might be somebody that is occupying that gate that you wanted to open. Because the angels, how it works is the angels of God works this way. They will come and give you blessings. But if the demons stop the angels of God, they pleading their case to say, we say no, because, or sometimes it could be simple, they feel that you're not ready or you're holding unforgiveness. It could be all sorts of different reasons. So that's when you have to learn to plead your case. I always go to forgiveness. Sometimes I go to bitterness. If there is any bitterness that I'm holding in my heart that is holding me moving forward. Or sometimes if there is somebody that I know that is bitter, I always break that, and I always see things, they turn out different than I expected. What I'm praying for, it ends up being opening other opportunities. So don't give up. I know our ancestors went through slavery. They went through pain that I cannot sit here and explain that pain because I never went through it, that pain. But all I can say is I personally don't want my great-grandfather want me to hold on to that pain. I'm sure he want me to find my identity. He want my children to find their own identity. He wanted them to live on. He want me to be proud of my bloodline, to be the changer in my bloodline, in my family name. And I think if anyone is watching or you're going to watch this video later, you have to ask yourself questions. What role are you playing in your bloodline? Is it the anger role or the changer? Are you the changer in your bloodline? If your bloodline were people who went through slavery and they are now still living in poverty, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to break that cycle of poverty, the cycle of anger? Break free, live your life. I even went to Forbes to check how many Black people who are billionaires and comparing. And I was like, there is an opportunity for people to actually find that breakthrough, but we don't find the breakthrough because we fear. And also mostly we are holding anger, but I'm just putting my hands up and saying, as Nomsa Witness's daughter, I just want to live freedom, and I understand what we all went through. So any words of encouragement, Shireen, because we've got to go now. We've been here for an hour and a half.
No, just to really reiterate what we've been talking about, which is really about observing what's happening in your life and checking out what gates are open and closed, and really checking back, is this an ancestral thing that I'm carrying? And if it is, and I loved what you said there, which was, would my grandfather have wanted me to carry this pain? No, he wouldn't, right? He would have liked you to carry it through with pride, with love, with gratitude, all of the things that make you great. So that's the bit that I think that, when we go for an ancestry journey, maybe to have that in your mind is that each generation has always wanted better for their offspring. So they would really never, ever, ever have wanted you to suffer. So it's really about truly appreciating their struggle, even though it was the most horrendous thing that ever happened. But truly appreciate that they got through it and that they lived long enough that you could be born. That you could be born to make a difference. And I think that is our collective responsibility. As a world, a collective responsibility. So that we can, and I love it that we talk about the United Kingdom, but it is the United Kingdom of heaven. which is really, I guess, I see it as here on earth, maybe someone's hell, but at the same time, that's what we're trying to create, aren't we? We're trying to create a united kingdom here on earth. Not the name United Kingdom, England here, very small place now. But yeah, we want a kingdom that's united.
Yeah. Yeah, united.
That's
yeah. And for me, I just honor my Black ancestors, speaking on everyone around the world. I honor you all for the strength and the courage that they went through. They never gave up producing generation after generation. I'm here because of my ancestors. Even though they went through pain, but they still had strength to live on. And the only thing that I can do is just to honor them and actually thank God for protecting them and giving them that courage to actually, for me to be born. And we are here at Nkosi Talk Shows Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. UK time. And please, if you're watching us on YouTube, please follow us, subscribe to our channel. If you're watching us from Facebook, like our page, and we have Nkosi Talk Show group and Unique Billionaire Mindset. Hold on, somebody's by the door. Unique Billionaire Mindset, and just join our group and be part of the community. In our group, people they use psychology to showcase their businesses and just be part of the community of Hope Spring and Nkosi Talk Shows. And if you want to connect with Shireen and other coaches at Nkosi Talk Shows, you can connect with them through social media. My website is still not up at the moment, but you can still find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on my business email. I have email. If you Google Hope Springs Eternal Introduction Agency, actually, my profile comes up. My phone number is there, office number, mobile number, and email address info@companyinitial.com. So you can find me there. If you email me with the coach that you want to connect with, I'll be able to connect with that person straight away if you can't get hold of them. That's what we do at Nkosi Talk Shows. We help people find their own voice, lead from within. And Hope Spring Eternal Introduction Agency is all about love. If you're looking for love and you're professional, you don't have time to find that special person, these coaches that are at Nkosi Talk Shows, they are at Hope Spring Eternal Introduction Agency as well. You can find them there. Hope Spring, we have James Pierce as well. He's one of the celebrity dating coach. And who else? Jo Burnett, she's there as well. There's quite a few coaches as well. So if you want to connect, you just let me know, Nomsa, who you want to connect with, and I'll connect you with that person. And live with grace, everyone, and God bless. Keep honoring your unity in Remember, United Kingdom is all about the name. It means unity. Black and white, we are all one, whether we like it or not. So God bless.